Alright, so the first upgrade to this 1377 has just come in the mail, and that is the stock. This is how the stock arrives in. Just your usual red, white, blue Crossbar box with the usual minimal Crossbar packaging. That's really it. There was no cellophane wrap, there was no plastic, there was nothing. This was literally the part you bought in a cardboard box. So the plastic material that this stock is made of is identical to the same plastic hardware that's already on the gun. Now to install this thing, you just simply have to remove the grips on your handle. Those are only held in place by a single screw. So to install this stock, you simply slide it into place. That's literally it. Now, the screws you took out from the grips before, keep those because those are the same screws that go into securing your stock to your gun. Now, since I've ordered all my parts from different websites, they're all slated to come in at different times. Now, this gives me a very unique opportunity to actually show you how this gun performs as it is progressively upgraded, instead of going from stock to fully kitted out. That way, you can see how each individual upgrade affects its performance. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to 8 yards. We're going to shoot this gun at the same target with the same iron sights and everything, same barrel, same everything. The only modification we've made so far is the addition of a stock, and we'll see how our groups tighten up. Alright guys, the results are in, and this is what I got. With the Benjamin hollow points, I got 11/16 of an inch. With the Gamo Magnums, I got 11/16 of an inch and 1/2 inch. Now let me explain why. I ended up shooting this particular pellet twice, just to sanity check myself. The reason being is that in the last test, the Magnums proved to be one of the most accurate pellets out of this gun. Next one up, the Gamo Master Point. This one, again, not something to write home about. I didn't even bother measuring this one because of how bad it went. Alright, so a few things to note. With this stock on, the length of pull on this gun is 15 3/4 inches. It's a little bit longer than what I normally shoot at around 14 inches. Now the stock does help with the trigger pull a little bit. Not that it actually lightens the trigger pull, but instead because the extra point of contact gets rid of that quivering you get on the front sight when you're trying to pull this trigger. Now the closer you can get to a peep sight, the larger your field of view is on the other side. This makes returning the front sight post back to center really, really difficult. And for me, that was a huge issue in trying to maintain consistency, which was why I had to shoot that Magnum round twice. So if your upgrade stops here, I highly recommend that you paint your sights a color that you can see. But on a side note, guess what showed up in the mail while I was shooting that? The rest of my parts, minus the barrel. Alright, so got the rest of my parts unboxed. I'm going to go ahead and start installing some of these. But this is what I mean by this gun gets really expensive to shoot. Just the trigger sear and the steel breech. I got those off of Archer Air Guns. And that is about $63 and some change. So already, just for 2 parts, we've already exceeded the cost of the base gun. Now as far as which order you should upgrade these goes, trigger pull is highly subjective. Some people shoot good with the stock trigger, others not so much. I'm one of those. So if you're stuck between upgrading either the trigger or a steel breech, by all means, go for the steel breech, because a nicer trigger is not going to help your accuracy when the sights on this thing is your limiting factor. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is take this gun apart at the handle and install the new trigger. Alright, so with everything in place, the steel breech and everything, you will have to get some sort of scope because your iron sights will no longer fit on this breech, which is kind of the whole purpose of getting this breech. So if you're still running iron sights with this thing, I don't know what the heck you're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and get a scope attached to this thing, and then we're going to go out and shoot it some more and see how the accuracy has improved. The pellets I used this time were just the Gamo Magnums, and this turned out to be the only pellets I tested for this particular setup because those were the only ones I'm probably ever going to shoot out of this thing. Because if you look at that group, so measuring this thing, it comes out just a little bit over 5 millimeters. In other words, slightly bigger than the pellet you're shooting. And this is from a 5-shot group at 10 yards. Now, a quick comment on this trigger that I have. Holy crap, is it sensitive. I mean, just look at this. This is a feather. Watch this. Now that is what you call feather light. In fact, the thing is so light, the trigger is so sensitive. Check this out. Okay. Safety's engaged. Watch this. Now this is a crossbar safety, meaning that there is a physical bar behind the trigger that prevents the trigger from tripping the sear. Now, just that little amount of play between the back of the trigger and that bar is enough to have this trigger go off. Guys, this is an amazing trigger. We're talking about accuracy and we're talking about pull weight, but it is probably the most dangerous trigger I have ever come across. So for safety's sake, if you are going to go with this trigger, which at this point I don't know whether or not I should or should not recommend, but this is the way I recommend you load this gun when running this trigger. Pull the bolt back, do not have this gun pumped, load your pellet, close the bolt, pull the trigger, that releases the spring tension on your hammer, then pump your gun. Now when you finally have your target in sight, that is when I recommend that you pull back your hammer and fire. But on a side note, my new barrel arrived. Now when I bought this barrel, I thought it was going to be a barrel specifically made for this gun without this ugly flat portion, but it looks like no matter where you get the barrel from, it's still being cut from the barrel used on the Benjamin Discovery. Alright, so with the barrel pin drifted out, time to install the new barrel. But before we do that, we need to clean this barrel first. Now, 17 caliber cleaning kits are kind of hard to come by over store shelves, so this is the easiest way I do. I take a piece of string, I run it down the length of the barrel by feeding it into the barrel, and it comes out the other side of the barrel. Pull that through. I just pull a good amount of it through, and then I tie the patch to it. And that's that. So basically I've created a pull through with several patches tied to one piece of string. On the other end, I just simply grab and I'll just pull this through the barrel. In my case, I've essentially made 6 passes with one pull. You see the first patch is extremely dirty and the next one's down, gets progressively cleaner till the very last one, it's almost clean. Now you might have noticed I switched over to using a pair of pliers. That's because my line broke, so make sure you got a strong enough line or else you might be trying to unjam your barrel. Once you've drifted that pin out, you can remove the barrel like this. Just simply remove the front. Now that the front side of your gun off, you'll have to disassemble the rest of the gun, at least the breech anyways, because you can't pull the barrel out directly like this, because the air transfer port is still attached to the breech. Remove the entire breech along with the barrel. Get your air transfer port. Pull out your barrel. Replace with the new barrel. Alright, so you can see the new barrel is on. Don't mind the blue tape, that's there to hold on the pump handle, because I am actually going to replace the roll pin on top of this thing with a like a bolt and nut. just so in the future I can disassemble this gun easier when I do the valve mod, if I ever get around to it. So right now, what we have to work with is the trigger sear. Now, you'll notice that there's this little bump on the top portion of this trigger. That is actually in contact with another metal piece right in front of the compression tube, right where the piston, not the piston, but the hammer actually is. So that's pretty much rocks right there on that point. And that pretty much determines how far your sear actually engages the hammer. So what I'm gonna do is, I got a pair of digital calipers here. This thing came in at 0.520. So I'm gonna shave down a few thousandths of an inch on this thing and then double check it against the digital caliper and basically just work that thing down, work this little point down until it no longer bump fires. So I had to do a lot more work than simply filing down that little bump on the top of the sear. I ended up having to file flat a section of the sear face itself just so it has a little bit more contact with the hammer. So the final sear ended up looking a little something like this. Now this particular sear is the Super Sear sold by Air Guns of Arizona. Now since I didn't feel like shelling out another $30 for another piece of metal, I just went on ahead and modified my current one. But if you're looking for a new trigger sear, I would probably recommend this sear over the one I have. Alright, so we're finally done with this whole build, and these are the groups I got out of this barrel at 20 yards. I did pull back the range that we're shooting at, and that really does go to show the consistency of your pellets. Now I did try 2 pellets in this test, and the top one is the Crosman hunting pellets. Now these pellets were consistently inconsistent at 20 yards, but at 10 yards they were consistently pulling single hole groups. Basically, I wouldn't shoot this thing anywhere beyond 15 yards, realistically. So our next target was shot using the Gamo Magnums. Now those were also capable of doing single hole groups at 10 yards, as we saw previously, but at 20 yards these started opening up, and that goes to show the consistency of these pellets. Now Gamo hasn't been known of making very consistent pellets at all. In fact, you open the tin up and you've got all sorts of flashing on all different sorts of pellets. It's like if they have like 10 or 20 different molds all throwing their pellets into one tin. And this group shows it. As you can see, some of these holes land in the same place while others are all over the place. And that goes to show that it's pellet consistency and not your gun. Now as far as this gun goes, it's pretty much done. This is pretty much the final configuration I'm going to have it in. Now I did do a few other things to it, namely to the trigger. I've lengthened the second stage just so it catches a little bit more. Now the trigger still does need some more work, as during that last test I just showed you, I did have one accidental discharge. The second thing I did was the roll pin. Instead of putting the roll pin back in there, I put in a M4 screw about 7/8 inches and a nut to secure it. That way I don't have to go and punch out the roll pin again when I do decide to upgrade the power plant on this thing. So the only thing that's still stock on this thing would be the power plant and the pump arm. Now for me, this is more of a target gun and not a hunting rifle, so power is not a primary concern of mine. Accuracy is. But with that being said though, the pellets I currently have on hand are just not consistent enough for this gun to shoot out beyond 20 yards and get good accuracy with. So the gun is capable, I just gotta find better pellets. Now true to all multi-pump guns, this thing is pretty loud when it goes off. So for our next project, let's see if we can quiet it down a little bit.